My finger hovered over the send button. One click, that's all it took. Hitting enter on that message, telling my husband the truth about my affair, changed everything. Boom! My world imploded. You think you know how these stories go? Trust me, you don't. This isn't about getting caught or begging forgiveness. Think more along the lines of lies spiraling out of control, whispers behind my back, and a twist of fate that left me wishing I'd never started typing that damn message. Buckle up, because husband vanished from our city after I told him the truth, is my story, and it's not for the faint of heart. The cursor blinked on the screen, mocking me. Just tell him. My traitorous brain kept whispering. Just get it over with. For 2 weeks, I'd been writing and deleting, rewriting and agonizing. How do you text someone that your marriage is a sham, that the guy you've been sneaking around with isn't some fling, but the reason you can't look at your own husband anymore? I typed the words, cold and brutal despite their simplicity. Then I jammed my thumb down on the send button before I could chicken out. Silence. Not the normal applause of a text conversation, but a thick, choking silence that made my ears ring. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, smash the damn thing against the wall. Instead, I shoved it in my pocket and stared at my reflection. It's over, I said aloud to the weary-looking woman in the mirror. He'll get the message, and that's that. My voice didn't even sound convincing to my own ears. The grocery store loomed ahead. I didn't want to go in, but the fridge was empty, a testament to weeks of takeout and ignored meal planning. The damn list in my hands suddenly weighed a ton. Milk, eggs, his favorite brand of coffee. I squeezed my eyes shut. Had I left it on the list on purpose? Some petty part of me hoped he'd notice, feel that little sting of betrayal. Inside, the bright fluorescent lights made my head pound. Every couple holding hands, every casual laugh felt like a personal attack. His coffee, dark and bitter on the shelf, practically screamed at me. I grabbed some random brand, tossed it in the cart, and fled to the checkout line. The rest of the day was a blur. His absence wasn't new. The affair had ensured that. But this was different. This emptiness was final. This was the space he'd leave, forever. The Google search results hit me like a ton of bricks. Betrayal trauma? Surviving infidelity? Am I a monster? Suddenly it was less about him, and more about what the hell was wrong with me. Every clinical term felt like a slap in the face. I slammed the laptop shut. Nope, not dealing with that today. Lisa came over that evening, bless her heart. She brought wine and that worried, eyebrows slightly raised expression I'd come to dread. I should have been grateful, but every sympathetic, "How are you doing?" just made me want to scream. Did she know? Did she suspect? "I'm fine," I lied, topping off my glass. Better. Actually, it's a relief, in a weird way. I didn't even try to make it sound convincing. Her pitying smile stung way worse than an accusation would have. The rest of the week was a blur of work, thankfully busy, and sleepless nights. Every song on the radio, whether it was sappy pop or screaming metal, was suddenly about heartbreak and betrayal. Had I been this clueless when we were happy, or had everything always been a lie? Worst of all was the smell. Not his cologne, though that haunted me too, but the lingering scent of him everywhere I turned. It had wafted off a passing stranger and sent me spiraling. I wanted to rip out my own nose, just to make it stop. One night, after too much wine and not enough food, I tackled the elephant in the room, our photo albums. Digital, of course. It felt safer, somehow, to delete a file than tear up an actual picture. Yet, each pixelated smile I banished into the recycle bin felt like a miniature murder. Hours blurred together while I clicked and clicked, flashes of happy memories stabbing with each deletion. Finally, exhausted and emotionally eviscerated, I collapsed on the bed. I didn't even have the energy to cry. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, shattering the dead silence of 3 a.m. for a hot, desperate second. I thought it was him. Some drunken confession, a plea for forgiveness. I snatched it up, just a spam text. I chucked the phone aside. But the jolt of adrenaline was enough to banish any hope of sleep. Our last fight played out in my head like a broken record. His shocked face, the way his voice cracked when he finally spoke, the awful words tumbling out of my mouth. The truth, ugly and undeniable. I was the villain. There was no way around it. The days that followed were torture. I became a pro at faking normalcy at work, plastering on a smile and making small talk. But each time my phone lit up, hope flared, only to be smothered by disappointment. Had he blocked me? Disappeared? Worse, was he already with someone new? The internet was no help. His social media, radio silence. A ghost town where our posed, happy life used to be. I obsessed over it, scrolling endlessly. I was part stalker, part masochist. And then, the phone call that made my blood run cold. His mother. Usually, our chats were polite and surface level. But her voice, there was a tremor to it. A hesitation I'd never noticed before. Have you heard from him lately, dear? I'm a bit worried. The unspoken question hung in the air. Did you finally drive him away for good? 1,000 lies raced through my head. It'd be so easy to blame his absence on work, some vague trip, but something made me blurt out the truth. Strict bear. He knows about everything. He hasn't contacted me. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, a soft sob and a whispered, "Oh, my dear," before she hung up. And then came the guilt. Real, gnawing guilt that was somehow worse than the shame. My hand instinctively reached for his spot on the couch before I remembered. Empty, cold. I shoved a throw pillow there, a flimsy barrier against the void. The TV blared in the background. Some mindless sitcom I didn't even care about. Distraction, that was the goal. It wasn't working. The worst part was the questions. From well-meaning coworkers, shabby neighbors, the cashier at the damn grocery store. How's everything at home? They'd ask, innocent smiles on their faces. Every time, I had to relearn how to breathe, how to plaster on my "I'm fine" mask. A lie, every damn time. And then there was him. The lover. The reason for the mess I'd made. His text, one measly "Are you okay?" hovered on my phone screen, a constant accusation. I wanted to type back, spill my guilt, beg for forgiveness. Or maybe scream in all caps, "You did this too." Instead, I blocked his number. Another small act of self-preservation. Another piece of myself I barely recognized. The guilt twisted inside me, a constant hum beneath the numbness. But there it was, flickering in the darkest corner of my mind. Relief. It felt monstrous to admit, but I couldn't deny it. No more pretending, no more dodging his questions, his silent judgment. A terrible freedom, laced with poison. One afternoon, sunlight streaming into the dusty living room felt unbearably bright. I couldn't stay locked up anymore, couldn't hide behind my carefully crafted lies. For the first time in weeks, I ventured out, just to walk, aimless at first, but each step felt defiant. The city didn't magically look different. Yet, something had shifted. I was no longer a ghost haunting familiar streets, but a woman, exposed and vulnerable. The weight of secrets didn't vanish, but it mingled with a strange anticipation now. What next? That was the terrifying, exhilarating question. The morning I swore I'd actually make it into the office, his toothbrush fell out of the bathroom cabinet. It clattered on the tiles, a tiny plastic missile aimed right at my heart. I froze, staring at it, and then something inside me snapped. That goddamn toothbrush was not going to win. I shoved clothes into a backpack, ignored the gnawing worry that I was running away, not just going to work. The train felt like a lifeline, its mindless bustle comforting compared to my own swirling thoughts. Each station I passed felt like another mile between me and the wreckage of my life. But the office wasn't a sanctuary I'd hoped for. His name echoed in unfinished reports. I found myself staring at his empty chair, imagining him there, accusing. My usual efficiency crumbled. I buried myself in menial tasks, answering emails with clicked responses, just to keep busy, to keep my brain from catching up. Lunch was spent wandering aimlessly, pretending to be fascinated by overpriced salads and boutique shops I couldn't afford. The envy was back, twisting in my gut, as I watched couples strolling by. They had what I'd shattered. Or did they? The thought was dangerous, seductive. By the time the workday ended, I was exhausted. But the idea of returning home was unbearable. I found myself in a dimly lit bar instead. The sharp tang of whiskey a welcome assault on my senses. Strangers clinked glasses around me, their laughter and conversations a comforting white noise to drown out my own thoughts. With each drink, the knot in my chest loosened a fraction. I wasn't fixed, not by a long shot, but neither was I paralyzed. I could keep moving, if only one shaky step at a time. That, for now, felt enough. The buzzer rang, its high-pitched whine slicing through my fragile morning. Not another, "How are you doing? Sympathy visit, please." I dragged myself to the door, expecting some takeout order I didn't remember making. It wasn't food. A small, brown box sat on the mat. His name, scrawled in that familiar handwriting I used to love, stared back at me. A return to sender notice mocked me from the corner. So even his belongings had given up on him. I kicked the damn thing under the couch, ignoring the satisfying thump. The rest of the day was spent avoiding the living room, that hidden accusation waiting to be dealt with. I tried to lose myself in spreadsheets, but the numbers blurred. His face kept flashing through my mind. Angry, betrayed, just gone. That night, the nightmare found me again. He was yelling, but the words were muffled, indecipherable. I reached out, desperate to explain, but he vanished into swirling darkness. I woke gasping, sweat-soaked and trembling. Sleep, the oblivion I craved, had become another form of torture. My phone buzzed nonstop, messages piling up. Sarah, David, even old college friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Had the news somehow spread? Every text felt like a noose tightening around my throat. I shoved the phone into a drawer, unable to confront their worried inquiries, let alone the mess of half-truths I'd have to spin. The package under the couch taunted me. It had to be dealt with. Opening it felt like breaking a taboo. Inside, a book he'd ordered, a new hiking backpack, random stuff that spoke of a life now abandoned. Trash or donate, it hardly mattered. The ache in my chest had nothing to do with these forgotten objects. I slumped on the couch, defeated. The space beside me felt vast, an emptiness that mocked my fleeting sense of escape. I was hunted, not only by my guilt, but by the relentless exposure of it. His disappearance wasn't the end, only a terrible, drawn-out beginning. The book I picked up felt wrong. It had been on the bedside table for weeks, one of his choices, and now the sight of it made my stomach clench. But something stubborn in me refused to give up. I forced myself to read a page, then another, willing myself back into some semblance of routine. It was just a book, not a booby trap. Days bled into one another, a blur of work, numb half attempts at normalcy, and nights haunted by his absence. I'd wander the apartment barefoot in the evenings, the echoing silence amplifying every creak and groan into a potential threat. Was that his footstep? My overactive imagination was painting a fresh kind of hell. One morning, I walked past the corner coffee shop I used to frequent with him. A couple laughed at a table by the window, their ease a mockery of my shredded nerves. I caught the barista's eye, and swore I saw pity flicker across her face before she looked away. Had the whole city turned into one giant jury, judging my every move? The whispered rumors started subtly, not direct accusations, but raised eyebrows, a sudden silence when I entered a room. People I barely knew offering unsolicited advice on getting through difficult times. I wanted to scream that this wasn't some generic heartbreak. I'd caused this disaster, and every sideways glance seemed to confirm it. Then came the voicemail. His mother again, her voice strained and brittle. "I just saw him. In the supermarket. He looked. Well, I thought you should know." The floor tilted beneath my feet. He was here, in the city, like a lurking ghost. And now everyone would know I'd lied. I spent the rest of the day in a numb haze, imagining the confrontations. Him, eyes blazing, cornering me in a grocery aisle. His mother's tears of sorrow and relief that he was alive, if not well. Or worst of all, silence. Him refusing to acknowledge me, erasing me from his existence, just as thoroughly as I'd erased his from mine. The text bubbles stared at me, empty and mocking. It was almost a relief, those few frantic taps of the delete key, erasing the confession before it could ruin me even more. The truth, choked down, festered inside me instead. Sleep had become the true enemy. The bed, with its expanse of cool sheets and echoing space, was unbearable. I started sleeping on the couch, curled up tight in a pathetic imitation of safety. Each time I woke, heart pounding, I checked my phone with a desperate hope I knew was ridiculous. Still nothing. Work days were a blur of forced conversations and meticulously masked anxiety. But the nights, those belonged to my unraveling. His toothbrush, that stupid plastic thing, still glared at me from the bathroom cup. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, yet the sight of it made me sick. It became a kind of twisted ritual, proof that this hell was real, not just some fever dream. I found myself obsessively checking his mother's social media, vacuous posts about her knitting circle, photos of her cat. Nothing. But I clung to it, scouring every mundane image for some clue, a hidden message only I could decipher. The silence was the worst. It screamed at me from every corner of the apartment. And it wasn't just his silence anymore. Lisa hadn't texted in days. My colleagues' pitying glances had morphed into outright avoidance. He was winning, erasing me from his world, and mine was crumbling around me as a result. One afternoon, I cracked. The bar had become my guilty haven. In the dim light, with the burn of cheap whiskey, the edges of my panic softened. That day, I didn't just have one, or two. I lost count, lost track of time. The bartender's concerned frown just one more blurry detail. Stumbling home was difficult. But in that hazy, alcohol-soaked state, a reckless plan began to form. It was stupid, desperate, possibly insane. But as I passed out on the sofa, a twisted flicker of defiance sparked in me. I wasn't going down without a fight. My head pounded like a war drum when I woke. The half-empty bottle of whiskey on the floor was a mocking testament to my meltdown. But beneath the hangover haze, a reckless determination fueled me. Time for lies was over. I wasn't going to hide anymore. The ring came off first. It felt heavier than I remembered, leaving a pale, accusing band on my finger. I shoved it into a drawer, a tiny act of rebellion that brought no relief. Next came the bigger lies. Ones that wouldn't just disappear with dodged questions or ignored texts. Emails were harder to fake. Official communications left a trail. I sat at my laptop, fingers trembling, and crafted my masterpiece. An overseas job offer he couldn't refuse, a sudden departure, just vague enough to be believable, especially with my forced cheeriness. I hit send and stared at the screen. It was done. And then, the craving hit. Not for more booze, but for him. The ghost I'd conjured. I had to go back to that place, the little bistro where we'd first met. Was it pathetic? Of course. But I clung to the twisted comfort of reliving what was lost. The bistro was unchanged. Cozy booths. The smell of freshly baked bread. Couples whispering sweet nothings across their tables. Every detail was a fresh wound. I didn't order wine, like we used to. Just coffee, black and bitter, to match my mood. As I left, I knew I'd made a colossal mistake. Instead of closure, I felt even more exposed. The lies I'd woven a noose around my neck. Yet, there was a perverse thrill, too. It was out there now, this fake happy ending I'd created. The consequences would come, I knew that. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't just reacting. I was acting, no matter how destructive it might be. The rest of the day was spent in a state of jittery anticipation. Would his mother call? Breathless with relief? Would concerned colleagues email? Would he appear at my door, somehow having seen through my pathetic charade? Nothing. But the waiting, the not knowing, was its own special brand of torture. The apartment felt like a prison. Each echoing silence was a countdown to disaster. It came in the form of a phone call, my heart thundering as I saw his mother's name flash on the screen. Here it was, the unraveling I'd so foolishly set in motion. He's back, she choked out, a sob catching in her voice. I saw him in town. He looked terrible, but he's alive. Her voice shifted, confusion lacing through the relief. Your email? About the job? Didn't he tell you? It took me a few awful seconds to process what she was saying. The overseas job was real? My manufactured lie had somehow become the truth. But how? Terror twisted in my gut. I stammered out some excuses, vague promises to talk to him, to clear up the misunderstanding. None of it made any sense, even to me. Hanging up, I stared into space. The room seemed to spin. My grand scheme had blown up in my face, leaving me more exposed, more vulnerable than ever. News spread quickly. Lisa's hesitant text arrived next, a mix of cautious concern and thinly veiled suspicion. Purdy's back? Want to talk? You know I'm here. Colleagues, distant relatives. I felt them all zeroing in with morbid curiosity, the buzzards circling a dying animal. I shut my phone off. Cowardly, but self-preservation kicked in. I couldn't face the questions, the accusations, the whispers turning into shouts. Instead, I drifted. I cleaned. A frenzy of scrubbing and sorting, desperate action to combat the chaos in my head. But even the spotless counters couldn't erase the sense of impending doom. And then, the worst of it. Walking home from the grocery store, I saw him. Not a blurry figure on a corner, but him, real and undeniable, right in front of me. He looked thinner, shadows under his eyes, but I'd know that face anywhere. He stared back at me, shock turning to cold fury. I opened my mouth, but no words came. There were no excuses, no explanations that could fix this. Then, he simply turned and walked away, erasing me from his world as I watched, helpless and heartbroken. The rest of the day passed in a blur of tears and trembling. I craved certainty, and now I had it, cold and terrible. He was back, and he wanted nothing to do. I'm home, guys. Turns out I could come home early today after all. I also brought back some of your favorite cake, Sherry. Why are you guys ignoring me all the time? Who the hell do you think you are, ignoring the person who provides everything you need to survive? My name is Allison Kobayashi, and I'm a 30-year-old housewife. At the time of this particular story, I was living together with my husband, Gideon, and my daughter, Sherry, who was in the first grade. Our family was very close, and we were happy every day. We went on trips together on weekends, and we always had dinner together, whether it was at home or somewhere outside on special occasions. Tragically, though, it didn't take long for our happy family to be destroyed. It seemingly all happened in the blink of an eye. One day, Sherry came home from school and suddenly shot herself in her room. This was definitely not like her, because every day, she would normally exclaim, "I'm home," in that lustrous, energetic voice of hers, and we'd have a small snack together. But the fact that she went into her room without even saying anything at all made me suspect something must be wrong. I rushed to my daughter's room, but when I attempted to open the door, I discovered she'd locked it. My suspicions were pretty much confirmed by then, and convinced she needed someone to talk to. I knocked on the door and called out her name. "Sherry? Are you in there? Sweetheart? What's going on? Did something happen at school?" I asked her, and she didn't respond, but I could hear her crying in her room. I came to believe this was the result of some kind of trouble at school. I kept on knocking on her door, calling to her as gently and compassionately as I could, hoping to get some kind of response. I know it sounds like I'm being annoyingly persistent, but you can't blame a mother worrying about her own daughter, who could be crying alone in her room. A few minutes later, she came out of her room and she really was crying, and boy, oh boy, was she crying a lot. Her cheeks were completely drenched and warm to the touch, and snot was running out of her nose onto her lips. I feared the worst, and I almost started to cry myself, but I forced myself to keep my cool, hugged her, and listened to her story as she began to speak. Then, Sherry made a shocking statement. "Daddy was hugging a friend of yours, Mommy, in the parking lot of the big shop with all the food. Many people could see them. I saw them, but I don't know if they saw me." I was so surprised that I asked her for some more details. "My friend Tommy's mom picked me up from school today. Don't worry, I told her thank you many times, Mommy. And on the way home, we went past the big shop with all the vegetables and big boxes outside. I loved looking at all the colors, and I looked out the window of the car to look at the vegetables, and I saw Daddy and your friend together, Mommy. I wanted to open the window and say hello to them, but then they started hugging." She started to bawl again. Her sadness was so genuine and so pure that it twisted and wrenched my heart. "Did Tommy's mommy see them too?" "No, I don't think she saw them." I was about to cry as soon as I knew it was Daddy, but I held it in. "Mommy. Way to go, Sherry. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. And I'm very sorry you feel so sad. So according to my daughter's testimony, Gideon was having an affair with one of my friends from Sherry's school. Since I was completely convinced our family was close and happy, I never dreamed he would ever have an affair, and I felt nothing but shame and apology that Sherry had seen the affair with her own eyes. I couldn't do anything but hug her. All I could do in that moment was to hug her, try my best to console her, apologize to her again and again and again. Eventually, I started to cry too. After a short while, Sherry calmed down, and I was thinking about starting to cook dinner when I received a message from Gideon. The message said he was going to come home late. I had one look at my phone and froze dead still. Sherry noticed and called out to me. Mommy, what's wrong? Oh, nothing, honey. Daddy's just going to be home late. Daddy's a big liar. I loved you so much, Daddy. Now I hate you so much. You hurt Mommy, and you made me very sad. I hate you. Sherry was utterly and completely furious, but the expression on her face was pure sadness. How about we play a little game, sweetie? Let's play secret game. We're a team against Daddy, okay? Here are the rules. First, we don't tell Daddy about him hugging another woman. And second, Mommy will go do some detective work, and you won't worry about anything. Do you think we can win the game, darling? I know that telling a child not to worry about anything isn't exactly the most ideal thing to do, but what else could I say, especially in that situation? That's all I could think of that was reassuring. We slept in the same bed that night, hugging each other and comforting each other. Gideon seemed to have come home later on. He didn't call out to us, nor did he say anything to us at all. He apparently went to work early the next day, because we never saw each other that morning. The next morning, I saw a now more recovered Sherry off to school, and then I ran to a trusted detective agency. I asked them to investigate a love affair against my husband, and they told me it would take about a month before they could give me any substantial results. If there was evidence that confirmed Gideon was having an affair, they promised to contact me before they whipped up the report. Thereafter, some time passed before I heard from them again. Not so long as an entire month, but it was certainly more than 2 weeks. Being together with my husband for that long, knowing that he was actively being unfaithful to his family, was nothing but agony. It was like running a marathon, knowing that I was heading straight into a thunderstorm. And when they would contact me, claiming they now had firm evidence to confirm a suspected affair, and I, in turn, would have to face up to whom he was having an affair with, I despised the notion that someone else would find about the affair because my husband was with one of my friends from Sherry's school. Even I hated having to know who the woman was, and the fact that it was Gideon who was persuading her to go out with him made me absolutely sick. I don't think I ever felt this uncomfortable and disgusted towards another human being. Sherry and I were so disgusted with Gideon that we played the secret game like true professionals. We did our best not to talk to him at all. Sherry actually stopped approaching her father altogether. Is she going through a bit of a rebellious period lately? It's a bit early, isn't it? Gideon never had a clue in the world and kept on saying carefree things like that. I was just so sick and tired of his existence. One day, while leading such a stressful life, I was contacted by the detective agency. I was both happy and scared to find out all the bad things my husband had done. The staff at the detective agency reminded me that this was only a draft, an interim, and that it wasn't to be taken too seriously just yet. I received some photographs in my email. By that point, I knew for sure that he really was cheating on me, and the photographs were all taken at the same supermarket where Sherry had first caught sight of them being unfaithful. I couldn't understand why they were hugging each other in the supermarket so often. I couldn't help but feel sick to my stomach once again. It felt worse than my morning sickness, which was already quite the doozy. And when I saw the woman in the photographs, I gawked at the screen, stunned and speechless. The woman, whom he was having an affair with, was none other than my best friend, Anna. Anna often came over to our house, and Sherry liked her very much. So much so that she considered her an aunt. Whenever she came over, Sherry ran up to her and asked her to play, and then they would have lots of fun together. Sherry's favorite thing to do with her Auntie Anna was going to theme parks together. Of all the women that could have been having the affair with my husband, she was literally the last person I was expecting. I just couldn't believe what I saw, and the fact that Sherry was the first to see the crime itself. Oh, Sherry darling, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Needless to say, I was downright furious with Gideon. I was able to find out about the current status of the affair through the interim report that the detective agency, but they informed me that it would take a little more time to prepare a report eligible for the court. Therefore, I didn't question Gideon about the affair, and I was left with no other choice but to live with him as if nothing was happening. I could not forgive my husband for cheating on me, but I thought that it was not good for me to be a single parent for Sherry's sake. However, she was asking me questions about her father's affair, and as days went by, it became increasingly difficult to keep everything from her. So eventually, I decided to tell her. She may still be in the first grade, but she was the one who first had a clear understanding of what was going on. She first uncovered the affair after all. I hate Daddy for cheating on you, Mommy. He hurt you, and he hurt me too. I hate him. I want to be with you, Mommy. Please don't make me stay with Daddy. As she said that, she hugged me very tightly. I hugged her back tightly too. I could no longer live with the husband who betrayed us, and we can no longer live together as a family. Even if I stay at home like this, it won't be good for our future as a married couple, nor will have a positive impact on Sherry's future. So right then, I set my mind on getting a divorce. From that day, it would take about another month before the report from the detective agency arrived, but Sherry and I actively began to avoid any form of contact with Gideon. We didn't have any conversations with him. We didn't invite him out on any family trips on the weekends, and we never asked how his days at work were. Both of us began to see Gideon as something that wasn't human, more like an abomination that was going to be terminated very soon. I made an interesting new discovery that night, that someone you loved once upon a time can appear as something completely aberrant when you really can't accept their existence anymore. Gideon started coming home at different times every day. There were days when he was very busy and worked late. Some days he came home on time. Of course, my husband didn't know that I was investigating his affair, so I had to treat him as usual, but I couldn't have a conversation with him, and nor could Sherry, because of how much we despised him after what he did. Even during the meals, day after day, conversation was zilch, and often, not even a single word was uttered. One day, I received a message from Gideon saying that he had to work late, but he came home earlier than I expected. My darling Sherry and I were having a nice talk over dinner, but when Gideon came home all of a sudden, our conversation came to an instant halt. I actually felt the air in the room get colder by a couple degrees. I'm home, guys. Turns out I could come home early today after all. I also brought back some of your favorite cake, Sherry. Why the hell are you guys ignoring me all the time? By this point, he was talking to us pretty loudly, but of course, we kept on ignoring him. Where the hell is my food? He was getting furious, but of course, we couldn't care less and paid no attention to his exhilarating tantrum. Why? Because he said he had to work late. So I didn't prepare anything for him? In any case, I was sure that by I could come home early today meant that his girlfriend couldn't make it to their little romantic soiree together. Who the hell do you think you are, ignoring the person who provides everything you need to survive? As he shouted these words, he slammed his fist onto the table. The shockwave made the table bounce into the air for a split second, and as a result, a couple dishes fell off. The dishes shattered against the wooden floor, spilling a bunch of food all over the place, and making the floor what appeared to be vomit of a drunken crackhead just outside a smoky downtown jazz bar. And still, we ignored him. We ignored him for so long that he actually got scared. Wait a minute. Hang on. I'm not invisible, am I? I almost laughed when he said this as he began to place his hands all around his body. After I confirmed that he wasn't see-through, he still went on endeavoring to get something out of us. But of course, we ignored him. You're mad because I didn't come home on time? I'm sorry, honey. I guess I should just get my own dinner. I'll just leave the cake on the kitchen counter, okay? He's saying such things, still feeling around all over his body, trying to reconfirm that he really wasn't invisible. But I never wavered in ignoring him. No matter how many times he could check, there's no damn way he'd be transparent. And that's only because we were simply ignoring him, treating him as though he didn't exist. Hey, Sherry, sweetie, how about going to the amusement park next weekend? I'm thinking about buying some tickets. It's been a long time we last went to that place, hasn't it? He was trying so hard to get her attention, but she was being such a good girl. Gideon went on talking, trying to get our attention back, and frankly, I wondered how in the world he could talk to us when we were both considering him dead to us. Hey guys, I'm begging you, answer me. Why are you two treating me as if I don't even exist? Did I do something wrong? Come on, guys. Tell me, please. Am I on my way to heaven? Maybe you can't even see me for some reason. Maybe I'm something beyond invisible. Maybe I don't even exist anymore. Or maybe I have some kind of superpower. I could be the leader of the Justice League right now. I can't tell you how many times I've had to hold back my laughter because he's just been talking about hilarious nonsense to himself whilst being ignored for so long. Perhaps he really got scared because of how much we weren't paying attention to him because he bolted out of the house. I am still alive, right? Is the mysterious statement that he left behind. Cherry and I laughed. Daddy thought he was a ghost. He looked so funny. He almost made me laugh. Darling, great job ignoring him. I think you deserve a piece of that cake. We got up from the table laughing, and we laughed and laughed as we washed our dishes and helped ourselves to some slice of cake. He doesn't think we know that he's cheating on us. He merely got frightened and went out to see if he was still alive. Perhaps he assumed that if he had tried to stay at home, he would eventually think he really had become a spirit of sorts. By the time 2 weeks had passed since my husband ran from the house, my daughter and I were living happily in a traitor-free environment, without anyone to suspect of foul play, and without source of negative emotions whatsoever. And then the papers arrived from the detective agency. I paid a visit to the lawyer's office and asked for a lawyer to help us in a court case against Gideon. After we made sure that all the evidence was in place with the professionals' help, we began the divorce proceedings quickly. The service of the lawyers were absolutely fantastic and things went very smoothly. All in one day they prepared the documents, walked me through the legal procedure, and even guided me as I signed them right then and there. It was sent to my husband and Anna, and they informed me that it would arrive to their doorstep in 2 or 3 days. Since I didn't know where my husband was at the moment, we made sure the documents would arrive at his job and at his parents' house. 2 days after we sent the contents certificate, Anna suddenly contacted me. The content certified letter specifically stated the receiver not to contact the sender directly, but perhaps she failed to notice it. I didn't want to answer the phone, but I thought that Sherry would be concerned after a while if it kept ringing, so I decided to answer. When I did, it came across way too loud and clear through the phone that she was pissed off beyond all recognition. What the hell are you doing demanding alimony from me, Allison? You're out of your mind. You're crazy. You're bonkers. Why would you ever think I wouldn't sue you? Because your husband forced himself on me? I have no obligation to pay you anything. I actually want alimony as much as you do. She didn't seem to be cooperative regarding the demands for alimony, but I kept a calm mind as I talked to her. I mean, perhaps he did force himself onto you, but you still gave voluntary consent to have a romantic relationship with him. The simple fact that you accepted his proposal, forceful or not, makes you just as guilty as he. And additionally, the fact that you've been in a relationship for so long makes everything crystal clear. This was never a one-way street. You also had feelings for him, which is why you never backed out of the affair, because it was too late, and that's why you're getting demands to pay alimony. You betrayed my daughter's trust, Anna. Do you have any idea how much pain she's been going through? He told me that if I refused him, he would destroy my relationship with you. Ironic, isn't it? Because it's destroyed anyway. If you truly felt like he was backing you into a corner, allowing you no way out, you should have talked to me about it. You've been actively having an affair with him for 10 whole years. That excuse is not going to convince anyone. How do you know about that? That furious Anna was now nowhere to be seen. I could definitely hear her voice shaking now. Yes, you heard right. Gideon and Anna had actively been having an affair for 10 whole years, and there's firm evidence supporting the conclusion. When the detective agency was doing their investigation, I'd also asked them to find out how long he'd been having the affair. To do so, they had to investigate his belongings. While my husband was away for work one day, a staff member from the detective agency was scheduled to visit my home. They asked me to lead them to my husband's room, and I helped with the search. After perhaps 20 minutes, we found his old computer, which he had replaced, in his closet. After repairing the computer and recovering the data, it was discovered that the computer contained emails sent between Gideon and Anna. The exchange went on for years, with the oldest recorded message sent by Anna, no less, on June 6, 2013, and that was 10 years ago. When I told Anna all of this, she started to bawl on the phone. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for hurting you, and for hurting darling Sherry. I promise I'll make sure you never see me again. I'll keep apologizing until you forgive me, and I'll do whatever you say. Please, I'm begging you. Please don't ask me to pay alimony. In her voice, I could literally hear her getting down on her knees as she begged me. I finally had the chance to raise my voice to my best friend who had less common sense than a drowned codfish by pleading me to have merciful and hold off demanding alimony for her crime. Apologize to me for the rest of your life? Don't ever contact me, or have anything to do with me, or my daughter ever again. You destroyed our family, and now what? You want me to spare poor little Anna of her heinous deed and decide not to demand compensation? Don't you dare do anything other than what I'm about to ask you. First, stay out of our damn lives, and second, take responsibility for what you've done and pay well for it. I yell at her. I couldn't believe she was ever my friend, but then she starts to tell me why she doesn't want me to demand alimony from her. Last year, both of my parents were killed in a car accident, leaving my baby brother, who's 17 now, without any guardian to support him. His grandparents were retired in Australia, and I'm literally all he has left, and I want him to go to college. I'm working every day to save up for his school fees, and I can't afford to pay alimony. I know apologizing won't be of any use, and I know you'll never forgive me, but I simply can't afford to pay you alimony without sacrificing my brother's future. Please, Allison. We've been best friends for so long. We did so many things together in school, particularly matching costumes and stuff like that, and we had a lot of fun, didn't we? Who would have thought we'd also have matching husbands? And after that, the same stupid bullshit of begging for my forgiveness. I was sick of her voice. I was sick of her begging. I was sick of her. You were cheating on my husband and destroyed our happy family, and now that your own family is in trouble, you won't dare take responsibility? You're an adult, for crying out loud. Freaking take responsibility for what you've done. I will apologize for the rest of my life, and I will do whatever it takes. Just anything but paying alimony, please? Please, please. Even after everything I'd said, she still wouldn't back down. I was just about to vomit hearing her whiny, pathetic voice crying the whole time, so I said one last thing before hanging up the phone. I know that for those who engage in an unfaithful affair, should the victim request it, the perpetrators must be responsible and pay alimony accordingly. This is common knowledge, and yet you never try to stop the affair, so the responsibility is yours to bear. I expect you to face up to it. I never heard from her again after that. Soon after that call, I got another call, this time from my husband. My husband was exactly like Anna. He told me stupid bullshit about how she forced him to go out with her, and that he couldn't say no, and so on and so forth. Blah, blah, blah. I never spoke a word and just hung up during his sentence. I was also feeling a little under the weather and fell asleep on the couch. While I was asleep, Sherry had apparently called my parents from my phone, and I explained the situation to them. By the time I woke up, Sherry and my parents had cooked for me and were watching me sleep. Sherry was snoozing too with that cute little stuffed bunny doll she loved. My parents explained what their granddaughter did, and I cried because my daughter had grown up so much. We were spending such a wonderful time together as a family when all of a sudden, out of the blue, Gideon, who had lost so much weight since I last saw him, unlocked the front door and trudged inside. I don't know how long it had been since we had seen each other, but he looked so different. None of us knew who he was, and because he had changed so much, we saw him as a suspicious person. The first time Sherry saw him, she got so scared and started to cry. Sherry, sweetie, it's me, your daddy. Calling me a prowler is cruel. So cruel. He looked like he was about to cry too, then he started talking, his voice cracking and his legs shaking. I saw the content certificate. I'm so sorry. I swear on my life, I will never do this again. I just don't want a divorce. That's all I want to talk about. I know you don't love me anymore, and I know I can't bring you to love me again, but I want to see my darling Sherry grow up as much as you do, Allison. He was sobbing by this point, but it's not taking any effect on me. I'm sorry. I can't believe you anymore. Not only have you lost my love, you've lost my trust forever. I just can't anymore. Please, please, please. My husband was on his knees. My father spoke up. I suppose you understand the gravity of what you've done, son. I demand you stay away from my daughter and granddaughter. They mean more to me than life itself, and I won't have any scummy bastard trying to ruin their happiness. His voice was terrifying. Gideon went a few shades paler and tried to run away out the front door, but he turned around once more and looked at Sherry, who was wiping her eyes and sniffing snot from her lips. Sherry, my dearest, you need your daddy, right? You want your daddy to stay, right? He was actually trying to appeal to her, but then Sherry finished him off. Who is this old man, Mommy? I don't want him in my house. Gideon then left the house in tears. After that, the divorce was finalized through my lawyers. Sherry and I moved back into my parents' house. The school district was the same, so fortunately, my daughter's environment didn't change much. My husband couldn't afford to pay the rent for the big apartment anymore, and after selling it, he moved into a dirt cheap flat somewhere on the outskirts of the city. At work, word somehow got out that he had divorced his wife because of an affair. As a result, all the female employees lost their trust in him, and they all stopped talking to him. Gideon became increasingly lonely in the company. His reputation eventually became one as an unfaithful, untrustworthy employee, and thus, getting promoted to greatness was now a dream of the internally condemned. His salary never went up, and his superiors never gave him any challenging work or projects to handle. It seems Gideon doesn't consider his job to be very rewarding anymore, and now his personal and professional life both seem to be in limbo. As for Anna, she had had to earn money for her baby brother, who was apparently at the top of his school for his studies. He showed a lot of potential for a scholarship, and due to his parents passing in a car accident, Anna was responsible for providing the money that paid for her brother's tuition and other miscellaneous school fees. But now, she has to pay alimony for what she did. She simply didn't have enough, so she changed her job, and now she is working nonstop. Eventually, her brother found out about her affair, and now, he won't talk to her anymore. Just pay me the money and I'll be fine. I really despise an unfaithful, dirty woman like you, Anna. I scorn you, is what he told her before he went away to university somewhere in a rural area. Anna was left with her own misery, paying for her brother's school and paying me the alimony, never getting a chance to have anything to do with her darling brother again. As for Sherry and I, we are now living very happily in her grandparents' home. I've started a new job myself, and although I'm in a new, unfamiliar environment, I'm gonna do my best to make enough money for my daughter's bright future. Sherry's seen some traumatic things in life at such an early age, but ever since she started spending more time with her angelic grandparents, she's getting more energetic and happy with every passing